So in 1948, due to the creation of the State of Israel, many Palestinians are exiled from their homes and are forced to go to other places. And some of them go to neighboring Arab countries. Some of them come over to the United States. Again, legislation kind of dictates everything. So in 1953, the US passed the Refugee Relief Act that allowed a couple thousand Palestinian families to come over to the United States. One of those Palestinians was Ahmed Ibrahim. So the story of Ahmed Ibrahim is actually very interesting, and it's a story that you'll find amongst other community members that have come over to the United States as well as refugees in Ahmed's case. So Ahmed, again, comes from Jimsu, Palestine, and he's born in 1922. And again, in 1948, he's exiled from his home. And so what him and his wife do is they think of what can we do next? How do we survive, right? How do we provide for our family? And then they decided that Ahmed would come over to the United States and specifically stay with his wife's cousin here in the Bronx, right? And so in order to do that, Ahmed's wife's cousin had to sponsor them to allow Ahmed to come over here. And so what Ahmed did is he packed a small suitcase, grabbed items that he could find, and headed over to the United States. Now, Ahmed didn't have the luxury per se of bringing really a lot of items. As we saw in the front case, we saw books and toys and beaded shoes. Here we have much smaller items, right? We have more significant and personal items in terms of like homeland and things like that. So we see a rock, we see a vial of dirt and stones, we see his father's cane, right? But we don't see the large amount of items that we did in the beginning. And that kind of shows us that different people have different experiences when coming over to the United States. Again, push and pull factors determines that a lot. So Ahmed comes over to the United States to go stay with his wife's cousin in New York. And in order for him to get the money to come over, his wife ended up selling all of her jewelry except one beautiful necklace. And this beautiful necklace was to be taken by Ahmed and given to her cousin, who was again allowing Ahmed to stay with him and get on his feet. So Ahmed has his few items, has the necklace, comes over to the United States, and is on his way to his wife's cousin's house in a taxi cab. The taxi cab driver, was making small talk with Ahmed, and he notices that Ahmed has a really, really thick accent, right? And so the driver kind of thinks to himself, like this guy sounds like his English is really poor. Maybe I can take something out of the situation. Maybe I can find an opportunity here. And so the driver pulls up to the cousin's house and asks, Ahmed, here we are. How are you going to pay for the ride? How much money do you have? And Ahmed, being a little bit confused, is like, oh, well, this is what I have. I have this amount of money. The driver kind of smugly looks at it and says, oh, he's like, that's perfect. That's exactly what you owe me. And ends up taking all of Ahmed's money, leaving him on the porch of his cousin's house, ready to kind of start his new chapter, right? So think about that. Think about what it's like to be Ahmed. You are forcibly moving from your home. You're leaving your family behind. You don't have any money. You don't have a ton of language skills in the new area that you're going. You're not very familiar with the culture. It can be a scary thing, right? And so our goal is to really kind of put a humanistic face on folks that are coming over as immigrants, as refugees, and anything in between. It ends up being a very happy story, though, for Ahmed. So he does work as a peddler, which basically is like a door-to-door salesman selling items to household goods to different neighborhoods. And eventually he raises enough money to bring his wife and his 7 children over here to the US, all of whom hold degrees of some sort, right? So most of his kids become doctors, and I think 2 become lawyers. So it ends up being a happy story.